Welcome, episode 4 of PT Shop Talk. I'm Casey Hansen, and with me today, always present, always exciting, Nick Doling.
Good morning, Casey. How are you?
Good. Life is good. Sounds like some more snow as always, but you get used to that, I guess.
How much are you guys supposed to get snow up there? How much?
I think it's mostly wind, blizzard-like conditions, so I don't know what that means, but I didn't really have a number. But I've noticed that as time goes on, just like our normal news, I feel like the weather has become very sensational. Our last snowstorm probably, they came out 6 to 8 inches. It was going to be 10 hours long. Then it went to like 8 to 12 inches. It was going to be over a day. And then it turned out to be 3 inches over the course of a few hours. So it's a bad deal because you kind of boy cries wolf. It's going to snow. They say 6 inches. It's probably going to be 2. The problem was when, this as well as anybody, when you have a clinic and they're telling you 12 inches of snow, your patients call, they want to cancel before they even see what's happening. And you have to have that conversation of, well, let's just see how the weather looks. I want you to be safe, but you know how it goes. It might be 2 inches and just like any normal day. So I think that's part of my frustration with, like I said, the sensationalism of the weather lately too. I feel like the last 5 years it's been bad.
I'm in full agreement with you on that. I've had that idea for quite a few years now. Same boat as you for a long time, about 9 years, running a practice and feeling as though and obviously that creates an internal bias, so I'll acknowledge that. But, feeling as though weather, like anything else, can be sensationalized sometimes, for the betterment of people. I get it, where they want to make sure people are safe, but at the same time, on slow news cycles, it's certainly around the Midwest, it seems to be the big news stories when they come. We're lucky down here. I think we're only in a wind chill advisory.
Yeah, I think we're supposed to get down to not so much today, but I think tomorrow at 25 below or something again. So
can't wait. Cold. I'm driving up there. I'll be driving up there Thursday night. My younger brother gets married this weekend.
So well, that's exciting. Is that back home?
Yeah, we're gonna go all the way to Carrington Thursday night so we can be present and prepared on Friday. Get ready to rock and roll for that. But yeah, we've looked at that forecast again, just like anybody else around here. You're looking ahead at the weather, make sure that you can time things appropriately. And it looks like it's just going to be really cold.
Yeah. So where does one have a wedding like dance in Carrington? What's the venue?
I believe the reception is at the Armory.
Okay.
Which is what they booked. And historically, there's a renovated golf course there on the north side of town, which is played host to a good number of receptions like that. They do a good job there too. So, but the options are fairly limited.
Yeah, I just think my hometown, it's like the community center.
Yeah, not too far off.
You get a hot beef plate and do a little dancing, and
kids are excited. Should be a good time. I don't know. I gotta pick his brain sometime and figure out why they set a January wedding in North Dakota. But that'd be a story for another day. Like top 5 worst times and places to get married.
Yeah, it is an interesting decision. At least you don't have to worry about like overheating, probably.
No, and I like that he's in his late 30s as well already, and we'll say they've taken a less traditional route. So the dress code itself for the wedding is more to my liking as well. Black cowboy boots, jeans. Get to wear. Do have to wear a suit coat though. But I didn't have to go out and buy one. He gave me the thumbs up on one of my pre-existing. It's like nearly black. It's like super, super dark gray, pewter, somewhere around there. So, I mean, really exciting stuff.
Yeah, riveting
Yeah.
cast material. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's we just got an invite to a wedding too, and my wife was like excited. It's like, oh, we haven't been to a wedding forever. We've gotten to that age now where everything is stopped. Luckily, weddings, funerals, all that stuff is, we're kind of in that dead period. So it was like, oh, a wedding. Like, actually got excited. Where there was a period, mid late 20s where it was like, oh, can we
Yeah.
just not go to a wedding like one
Yeah.
weekend? So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's exciting.
Cycles of life, man.
I know. Yeah,
See where it
pretty
takes
soon
us next.
it'll be our kids getting married and then everybody we know dying. So
Well, hooray.
yeah. Yeah, that's I guess the next step. So
Yeah.
that
That's
mortality
just part of
starts
life.
creeping in. Yeah, right. You don't have the highs if you don't have the lows. So
It's true. Yeah. Yeah.
I had some interesting news. I found out via Christmas I am now a lord. My wife's sister's boyfriend bought me a 1 square foot parcel of land in Scotland.
Really?
Yeah, so that's technically that's how they do things over there, right? Like you become the lord of the land and you're responsible for protecting that land. That's old school style. It's a conservation effort, so they have forest in the middle of nowhere and they don't want people to come in and buy it and tear it down. So the thought process is, well, if we split this thing up between like 1 million people,
Uh-huh.
you'll never be able to sell it. Like nobody's going to want to go around and try to find out who owns what little plots of land.
Convoluted, but definitely heart's in the right spot.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I'm no fool. I know how nationalism works. Someday the country just goes, we're taking your square foot back. But
Yeah, eminent domain or something like that.
yeah, it's fun for the time being. I
Yeah,
get a
well,
nice little plaque. I believe I can go online and look at my little plot, see how it's looking.
do you have fiefs?
Yeah, I send a guy out there
Oversee it, yeah.
he goes out there like once a week and mows it for me.
Gosh, yeah, totally. Yeah, you talk about a different era. Never learned about all that, but that's cool, man. Well, Lord Casey.
Yeah, it's
exciting
about
stuff.
time I get some respect
Yeah.
around here. So that was nice. I don't use the doctor title very often. Really only when I teach. But
Yeah.
now the Lord title, I need new business cards. So
Well, you've earned it now. I mean, it's legit
Right.
too.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to change a lot of my stationery around the office. So
You
people
just gave
respect.
me an awesome idea for another PT topic. It's just maybe we just banter about one of these episodes. We can just banter about the doctorate title. Like, how do we feel about that? How do we use it? Do we use it? That'd be a whole other one. So let's put that one in the back pocket.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, I'll probably use my Lord title more.
Well, I mean, it's very distinctive. You don't have many lords around here. I mean, we got lots of doctors in America.
Yeah, right.
A lot of doctors, right?
Yeah,
But,
I mean, you can be a doctor of anything now.
wow, Lord's impressive, man. Good for you, Casey.
Yeah, I need to get some armor now. I think there's a lot of things involved with it. It might be, I don't do anything like to the minimum, so I need a kilt now. I assume I have to learn the bagpipes.
God, yeah.
But
Pretty
yeah,
cool
if I
stuff.
die, we talk about dying, I'm probably get like a cool Lord burial.
Yeah.
Have people play the bagpipes and
I love the bagpipes at a funeral. I'll admit it. I mean,
they're
you hear
haunting.
amazing grace on the bagpipes, man. That's gonna trigger the tears, man.
Yeah, there's definitely no more haunting instrument other than that like weird little electrical box where you like move your hand and it makes like that whistly noise.
Oh,
That
I'm
instrument's
blanking on
also
that.
haunting. You ever hear the Beach Boys like Good Vibration?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that little
Yeah.
instrument that does that weird little like
Oh.
I think I can kind of do the noise.
Oh.
It does that little noise.
Something like that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That
I
instrument's also
gotcha.
haunting. Don't hear that at all, but
Yeah. Like a lot of the Beach Boys music, like, has secretly haunting. Like
yeah, right.
very
Like on the
mellow. Yeah.
surface, it's like hey, let's go to the
Yeah.
beach. And then underneath, it's like, I'm suffer from deep, dark depression and the world is collapsing
Yeah.
in on me.
And the
Very
way it's been
interesting
used in
band.
films. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, cool. Man, any thoughts on how the NFL playoffs stacked out over the weekend?
Oh, I loved it. It all panned out just like I wanted it to. The Eagles lost, which was glorious. I think the Patriots lost in just absolutely phenomenal fashion. Mac Jones
Yeah.
comes back down to earth a little bit,
Mhm.
which it's
Yeah.
not fair to him, but people are already starting to go, just boy, he rolled in, replaced Brady right away, and you're like, I don't think they're the same guy. And it's not fair to him to say he's going to be one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. I don't know where you stand on Tom Brady, but I think we've talked about before, though, like you just love excellence, and that's a guy
Yeah,
that
I do. Yeah.
whether you like him or hate him, his ability to play at his age is phenomenal. And even
Well,
when he was young, he was good. I mean, he never blew people away with his talent, but
yeah.
just the consistency, one real injury his whole career. And
Well, I think that case, Tom Brady is a great example of how the media can just pull your strings in all these different directions, and early in his career, when they won those first three Super Bowls, I can remember many media outlets referring to him as the ultimate game manager, and he didn't get a lot of credit. He was a system quarterback. It was all Bill Belichick,
yeah,
and it was around the 2006 2007 timeframe, really '07, when Randy Moss came into the picture and his numbers just exploded. Then all of a sudden, he had the numbers to go with it. And I think around that, they came back from his injury, and people love those stories, right? And they rightfully so should. That it's not a race to riches, but kind of an underdog. You're overcoming something, right? You're not just handing something like you're saying with Mac Jones. Here's the keys, and there's nothing compelling about that. Whether it's a movie, whether it's a TV show, or whether it's real world, and you're following people like we do microscopically. But somewhere along that line, it was shortly after that, I think he became like the hated Brady, with Deflategate and well, I guess even before that, the Pats were tagged with Spygate, and people like a villain too. They want to see that guy get toppled over, but at the same time, I mean, the I don't know. I don't buy into the Deflategate stuff. He had a better game. Statistically, the fact of the matter is that thing got so overblown. Where if they were using this partially deflated balls apparently in the first half, and I believe that game with the Colts was, what the heck was it? It was like 14-6 at halftime, or 10-6, and the Pats went on with normal balls in the second half and beat them like 35-6. Really routed them. So I mean, it didn't actually factor into the outcome of the game to begin with, but people just love it. They latch onto that stuff. They love tearing people down, and but I think Brady is the greatest of all time, no doubt. That Philly game was, I mean, I feel bad for them. They were never really part of that one. They were just,
no,
that would have been the Vikings role, right? Like,
yeah,
great, we punched our ticket and then you're right back out.
yeah. I love seeing the 49ers beat the Cowboys. If talk about villains, the Cowboys still hold a villainous place in my heart, I guess. The early 90s have forever ruined me for the Cowboys, so root against them. So that was good. Yeah, Chiefs looked good. I mean, it all panned out pretty well. I thought it was an odd playoff week though. Like the NFL season's been phenomenal. It's probably one of the better NFL seasons as far as parity. Nobody ever standing out, and then you get to the playoffs, and there's most of them were non-games.
Yeah.
Or relatively not that exciting. So that was interesting. I mean, I guess the Bengals Raiders was a good game, but that got marred in all the ref controversy. So
yeah, I saw that they pulled that crew. They're booted. I saw that last night. That crew's booted from the playoffs.
Yeah, and there's always a chance when you ref those wild card games, you're not going to go on anyways. So they made a pretty easy case for themselves to be the team get dumped. So,
and on that note, personally, I loathe the early whistles. I think they kind of hide behind player safety, and I can understand that to a certain degree. But Good Lord. There's so many times where, that the whole subjectiveness of when somebody's forward progress is stopped, and when they choose to blow a whistle and all that stuff. It's just very subjective. And in a situation like that where it, affects a scoring play, it's like, yeah, they should be held accountable too. They do need, they're human, they're going to make errors, but they also need to be held accountable to that. Make sure they get it right.
Yeah, sometimes and probably not so much the NFL, but sometimes I wish in college they would release, because they rank or score the refs after every game.
Mhm.
It would always be interesting as a fan to see, like, hey, I don't think that refereeing crew did terrible, and like to actually publicly release their scores and be like, actually, we looked at all the plays and they nailed it 95% of the time.
Mhm.
Because I think as a fan, it's very easy to get biased, and a
Yeah.
lot of people don't understand the game, you know.
Yeah.
So sometimes it'd be interesting, you go through all this work to grade these reffing crews, and then it's just like this quiet behind the doors thing. Talk about accountability,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think the inadvertent whistle probably didn't affect that play as much as teams make it out to be. I don't,
Yeah.
watching the replay, that's a touchdown probably either way. I don't think the defense is like,
Yeah.
oh, you blew the whistle.
We
Thank
stopped
goodness,
playing.
because I would have gained like the 3 yards on him that I needed to get to make a play on the ball. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
It's a bad
this
deal.
big
Like I
what
said,
if, right? Yep.
in the days of replay now, I don't know why you blow a whistle on
Yeah.
something questionable.
Especially a scoring play.
Yeah.
It's going to be automatically reviewed or potentially scoring play. And it's like turnovers too. When they blow something dead. And what drives me wild is like, you follow this. This is just part of my own issue as a fan. I probably need to take a couple steps back still. But I think it was 2 years ago, they made a point of emphasis that, these stories come out, that the new point of emphasis will be that they're not going to blow dead turnover plays because they're going to be reviewed anyways. Right. But then they get into these rate of play issues and, advertising blocks and stuff like that slow them down. But I think that's genius, because if it's going to be automatically reviewed, why don't you just let it play out and then you can get it right? Instead, you have, these issues like we had to start the season in Minnesota. Like, what does the season start with? Like a butt fumble in overtime in Cincinnati. It's like, was he down? Was he not? And it's so interesting that, like, I don't know what they choose to overturn, what they don't. Still, when they call play dead and when they don't. I mean, it's all insanely subjective. So,
yeah, I noticed that this year in college, because I probably watch more college than I do NFL, but I felt like they were almost too long on the forward motion a lot of games I was watching. It's like, man, this defense is just punching this poor guy all over the place, and they're just not blowing the whistle. It's like he's going back like 2 yards. They still haven't blown the whistle. So that was the other end of the spectrum too, is like I said, so subjective. It was weird. Some of those reffing games, you're like, man, they're just, somebody's going to get hurt if you don't blow a whistle eventually. But when do you stop? I mean, you see it every once in a while, a guy busts out of the pile around the corner and gets another 10 yards, but
yeah. Well, I suppose we should move on to our main topic of the day. And get back to some therapy chat.
Yeah.
All right. So this week we're talking about how we prepared for our licensing board examination, the preparation that went into it, kind of how that third year played out for us to get us prepared. Any tips or, pearls of wisdom that we'd pass on to anybody in that same situation. So that's our big topic for today. So you want to take it away this time, Casey? You want to?
Yeah, I can start off. For folks listening, probably especially younger therapists that probably get angry, like the time period when I graduated, you could take those boards any day of the week you wanted. I feel bad now for students, PTs coming out, like knowing that, man, I have this window, I have to take this test. If I don't pass these boards, I have to wait or 4 months or whatever and take it again. So for me, studying was pretty passive. I I felt like I had the good knowledge, good and bad of, I would say the education I got was that it was very board directed education. Like what we learned in school was what was going to be on the boards. I felt that was very strong. And you can go back and forth and argue over, does that make you a good clinician or does it just make you good at passing your boards? In every level of school, you can have that argument. Parents talk about it all the time too, you know, with elementary, high school, you know, especially when the no kids left behind stuff became a big deal. You know, do you just teach the requirements and don't make active learners? So coming out of school, I knew I could take the test, and if I absolutely bombed it, I would know kind of where to study and go back the next week, take it again. I think a lot of PTs, at least in my time period, you graduated with a job already. It was kind of like, oh, you were interviewing while you were doing your last clinical. You knew you had a job. You just had to pass those boards. It was no big deal. Like I said, take it once, don't pass it, take it again, don't pass it. I think you could take it 3 or 4 times before they were like, yeah, you got to probably give it a year. So when I graduated, I had a job lined up. I was living with my wife, who was my fiance at the time. So I didn't really have anything going on. I knew when my job was coming. It was probably 4 weeks after I graduated, I had this job. So I was like, I'm going to study for a week, take the test, see where I'm at. That'd give me another 2 weeks. And I guess the caveat for me too is I'm probably my strong suit in school was test taking. I'm not a test anxiety person. I trust my gut. If I know it or I don't, I guess has always been my theory. I don't sit and ruminate over a question typically, unless you get down to a test and question later on gives you some idea of like a wrong answer you had earlier. But you know, we didn't have a lot of online stuff at that time, and I don't believe we took a practice test in school. I know a lot of schools now, they do the PEAT pre-test just to see where you're at. Kind of a requirement. A lot of schools now don't really do any of that stuff. I bought the big thick books. I had 2 different ones. I don't, probably Test Masters maybe. Trying to think of who the company was. I did not keep
score builders.
Probably Score Builders. That sounds familiar. I'm better trademark Test Masters because that's probably not really a thing.
Go create it.
Yeah. So I think the books had like 2 practice tests in the back. So I took a practice test, tried to find my deficits, went back, studied those areas. You know, there were certain things like acute care where it was definitely more like rote memorization of lab values, things like that.
Yeah.
Those I never really bothered studying. Again, you know it or you don't. So for those, I kind of wrote those lab values down on a cheat sheet, got in my car the day of the test. Boom, I'm going to memorize these quick because they are going to be in and out. I knew there was no way I was going to memorize those values and keep them day to day. That's just not how I operate. If I'm going to be honest, I didn't think there was value in them, but it seemed ridiculous to have to memorize them because I've been in a hospital. If something's off, they let you know. I'm not doing lab values out on the field and having to know like where your sodium levels are. So yeah, I reviewed then for about a week, got to the testing center. Like I said, you could do it whenever you wanted. So just randomly showed up. One of my classmates happened to be there the same day I was there. You know, it's like going into prison. They make you strip everything down. They give you like 1 2-inch number 2 pencil, like a scrap piece of paper. You know, the lady's like, I'm going to be watching you this whole time. Okay, lady, stop it. You're scaring me. Right. You know, my buddy's like, hey, we should get a beer after this. And I said, yeah. Right. And you had 5 hours, I believe, to take the test. It's
Sounds
a little fuzzy. Again, being a good test taker and just either know it or you don't, fire through that sucker. I think I finished in a little under 3 hours. So I'm like, oh, nice. wait around for the old drink with my buddy. Well, he took the whole 5 hours. So that was super good car nap I had waiting for him. But you know, passed it. I was lucky. You know, I felt like the questions I got were very skewed towards what I knew. You could roll in there and run into some questions that just you never came into in clinic. I probably had the advantage of doing a peds rotation. Not everybody does that, and you may end up with 5 or 6 pediatric questions, and if it's not something you really studied, that could hit you pretty hard. Did not hit a lot of neuro questions as far as spinal tracts and areas of the brain and those things, which I felt like were some of the tougher study areas. So I happen to not have any of that. I mean, it's all pretty ortho heavy. What is like 75% of the questions I think are ortho.
Yeah.
So that stuff.
I've read that before too, on that note of like people leave and they feel like I had more pediatrics than I was expecting, or I had more neuro than I was expecting and stuff.
Yeah.
But they've said repeatedly that it's broken down, like the percentile doesn't change, and there's definitely, it goes back to your own, again, your internal biases and the way that we maybe perseverate on the ones that we struggle with. So if I went in unprepared on peds, then it magnifies it, right? It goes from, even though it might have been 6 questions, it probably felt like 18 of them.
Yeah. And that's probably true. Like you said, yeah, I've always heard that they just break it down, so everybody gets the same percentage. I don't know if they lump some of them together or not. Like I said, I think it's like 75% ortho and the other 25%. I don't know if it's like always 5% acute, 5% peds, 5% neuro, wound care, or if they kind of lump some of them together, acute wound. But
so to summarize, you studied for a week?
Correct. Yeah.
I hope there's some students listening right now that are like, oh, sweet, that's all I'm going to do.
Yeah, I don't recommend it. If you're a good studier, I think that's enough time. I see students now, and we've made the mistake in the past of hiring people that haven't passed their boards yet. Especially my previous job, you're always looking for employees in rural, so you're willing to hire somebody. In Minnesota, you could operate on a temporary license. So you'd hire them, let them work for a month while they're practicing for their boards. And I just saw these people get in their own head on studying for this thing.
Yeah, definitely.
You make it bigger than it is. I don't believe in cramming per se, but I also don't believe in like studying for 3 months for a thing, because I think you almost become passive at that point with it too. I'll do a few hours here and there, and you get the app on your phone. I see a lot of my students now, there's website apps or 5 questions a day, or phone apps, and it just asks you random things. I mean, those are cool, but again, if that's what you're basing your studying on, I think that's probably too passive.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I'd agree with you.
You're not intentional with it. I don't know if it sticks. It's not a good way to learn. Snippet learning, I think, again, you need to be intentional with your learning. If you don't set aside time to be like, this is my study time, everything I soak in during this time is stuff that's going to have to stick. I think that's a better way to do it versus going, I'm just going to casually do questions every 15 minutes every day. I don't know. That's my preference. Everybody takes tests different. And that's, I guess, kind of the bum deal is some people just aren't good test takers at that testing center situation. Like if you're a test anxiety person, I think it's probably the worst testing situation you can possibly be in. Just a hard line limit on time. Ladies watching you, guys watching you, whoever's running the place. I mean, you have somebody's eyes staring at you. I mean, it's on a camera, but it's like anything, you can feel them watching you. You feel like you can't look left and right. Like, I don't know, you're like in a little cage. So I think some of that is just, preparing yourself mentally too for that kind of marathon test taking is, I think people forget about that aspect of it too. I mean, I think you get 1 break in 5 hours, if I'm not mistaken.
So yeah, 1 or 2. I'm going to take it 2.
Maybe it's 2. Yeah. God forbid you have to go to the bathroom. I mean,
just primarily to decompress, if anything, sometimes it just helps you restart it a little bit, get your focus back.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm all about speed runs, right? That's how fast can I hammer this sucker out? So that was my experience with it. passed. I don't have huge pearls of wisdom. It would just be pretest. I would take tons of pretests. I think that helps more than anything. Probably
Mhm.
take multiples, because taking one probably isn't an accurate representation of your strengths and weaknesses based on the questions you get. But if you take two or three and you're consistently weak in certain areas.
I brush up.
Yeah, got to brush up. And then I don't know. Unlike when we talked about the GRE, where I said study to your strengths, I would say this one I would study to your weaknesses a little more, just based on the wealth of questions that could be asked. And
Yeah.
I think there's
Yeah.
enough information out there where you can tighten up your weaknesses, where I felt like the GRE last episode, if you weren't great at English, I don't think you were going to magically become great at verbal stuff.
Yeah. This is much more honed in, whereas the GRE was so broad. Like,
Yeah.
you can only do so much to really effectively change your GRE score, I think. That's my
this
opinion.
one you could definitely study to your weaknesses
Absolutely.
and get better.
Absolutely. And if you have a weak point, just my opinion, I'm maybe jumping ahead, but if you have some weak points, and who knows where life's going to take you, but number one, you got to, your first priority is to get that license in hand, so that you have that. You've invested so much of your recent college education on that. And in some cases, all 7 years of it devoted to that, if that was your focus coming right out of high school. So you just got to prioritize and focus on that first and foremost. But, to people who are like, well, I'm never going to do geriatrics anyways. Well, who knows? Maybe you never know if the job you're taking out of school, if you stay there. I don't know the percentages on that. That would be a great thing to see. I've seen that PPS that like less than 20% of people ever stay with their first job, because life's going to take you in all these different directions. You're going to, maybe you meet somebody, you settle down, and you got to follow them for a career too. And then you got to change it. So just got to be prepared, and don't be so stubborn on what I think the stubbornness comes from maybe just creating excuses too. Like, well, I'm not going to do this anyway, so why should I bother?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know my first job when I interviewed, again, it was rural health. And are you willing to go out to these small communities, do outpatient? Are you willing to do the hospital stuff? And it was all, yep, I love that stuff. And they said, what about skilled nursing? And I said, if I'm gonna be honest, that's the one area I have zero desire to work in. And I would prefer not to work in that setting, if I'm gonna be honest. Well, fast forward 16 months in, our skilled nursing therapist quit. They needed somebody. I needed hours. It was marriage made perfect. And I actually ended up doing skilled nursing for 4.5 years, and I loved it. It was probably, of my rural health, my favorite setting. So, like I said, you never know. Don't pigeonhole yourself. Yeah, it fit me very well. I don't do it now anymore, but I did enjoy it. It was a blast. I mean, what I do now is more challenging. I enjoy that aspect of it. It did get a little samey after time, but like I said, I thought I'd hate it. Turned out I loved it. So
variety is the spice of life. Yeah. Well, I look back on mine, and I could say my third year at USD, the curriculum was set up very well, where the third year is almost entirely clinical rotations, and that allowed me, by my final two. I remember my second to last one, I was in Carrington, working up there, interning, and I did start cracking my book then, because coming out of winter break, we did have a prep weekend course brought on by Score Builders. I think that's who we brought in. I'm sure of it now.
Not Test Masters.
No, Score Builders.
Okay, just confirming.
A nice gentleman came in and came to Vermilion, gave us a weekend course, which I really felt was like, hey, you guys they give you a mock test and everybody bombs it, and it's like, okay, here you go. You need our book, right?
Surprise!
But we're like, joke's on you. We already all bought them.
All right, tricked you.
Deal. But coming out of there, I remember cracking open Score Builders up in Carrington, but not getting too deep into it. It wasn't until my final one, again, just being things that are challenging at the time, but looking back at them as a blessing. I was very far removed from my family. I was out in Rancho Mirage, California, at the Eisenhower Medical Center doing this big urban acute rotation, and I did 410s. So I'm away from my family, and I have 3 days off every week to fill time. So my Wednesdays, particularly being an off day, I spent those with a focus on board prep and covering different regions and things like that. So I got a lot of that backbone when I was out there. By the time you're in that situation, you're pretty confident you're passing. You're going to graduate from school. You've done everything you need to do there. So you just focus on learning about patient care, your clinical skills, and then your boards. I got back, and I had also invested in a Sullivan prep book. And after graduating, I started cracking into that one. And to your point, started taking more prep tests. So I agree with you completely. I took 9 total prep tests before I took my boards. I did the 3 with Sullivan, the 4 with Score Builders, and then the 2 Pete's. The 2 Pete's were the last ones that I took, and just because it's an exact replication of the board exam. And funny story, that 9th and final one that I took, that one was the most relaxed I did. Instead of trying to simulate the environment, I laid in my bed and took it. And I remember I pretty much aced it. And then you feel like you're in the mental state to go there and execute. So, like everybody else, went to a Prometrics, tested out in Sioux Falls. And back when I was taking it, just like you, Casey, you could take it at any time. You could sign up. You could apply and jump through all those little hoops and sit down and do it. So I want to say I took it in June. It's kind of like early mid-June, and I was the first student from my cohort at USD to take it. And this was really cool. And they only did this for like a little while, but the very next day, I remember I got my results online, which nowadays I think you have to wait a minimum of a week. But and then for a while there, it was going even longer. It's kind of like a retroactive swing back to the past, where people were hiring were telling us that it was taking them 2-3 weeks to find the results. But back in the day, I only had one sleep and then got up the next day, and kind of on a go figure, I'm like, oh, I'll just sit down and log in and see. And it's like results are in. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I think I wouldn't have changed the thing that I did. I look back and it worked out very effectively. I was very happy with my score. And I highly encourage the test simulation. So the first 8 that I did, I carved myself away, went to a library, whether it was in Sioux Falls or Marshall, kind of sat down in the most quiet area that I could and limited myself, just like you, Casey. I'm a fast test taker. I think it's about 2.5 hours, to get the exam for me. And if I'm dragging too long, I'm probably doubting myself too much. And that doesn't behoove me. So I'd recommend doing that focus on the prep exams, work on your weaknesses, just like you said. But definitely, if you are somebody who's prone to studying and you're really gonna invest the time, make sure you taper down as you approach the exam, though, because there's a certain kind of bell-shaped curve to how valuable that is going to be for you before it becomes intuitive and counterproductive. So at the most I ever did, it was like 2-hour blocks, like a couple hours in the morning, have some lunch, go back to a couple hours later on. I wouldn't recommend trying to study more than 2 hours at any time. You're not going to retain it anyways. The human brain just doesn't have that capacity to focus for that long, unless you're a 1% of a 1% type of mind. So I think by and large, prep as though you're going to take the test, practice like you practice, and prepare like and you got to be confident with all that. Like, I had classmates who definitely they struggled with tests, but they also struggled with confidence. And I think those two things go hand in hand. Like if your mental state is that of like, hey, it's going to take a miracle for me to pass this, or I don't even know why I'm here, and all these other people are so smart. Well, guess what? You got into school too, and you met all the qualifications, and then from that point, it's up to you to retain it. Make sure that like the stuff you learn. One thing we talked about, remember back at one of our episodes, a couple episodes ago, I think something's got to change when you get into grad school, where in undergrad, your mind state can be, yeah, this is the means to an end. But when you get to graduate school, you got to have a purpose-driven focus with it. Like the stuff you're learning is stuff you're going to use in your career. Stuff that's going to matter to you as a therapist. You're always getting like anatomy is not going to change, maybe regardless of what's going on in the world. I'm going to say that anatomy is not going to change by and large. Your insertions, your origins, your insertions, your innervations, your vascular supplies, things like that. Not going to change. Neurology and that doesn't change. Interventions change, but that's such a small portion of the exam as well. And maybe rightfully so now looking back. We had that episode about how much our practices have changed since coming out of school. And it's probably a good thing that interventions aren't on there, because shoot, you pull 10 therapists, you're going to have, 7 to 8 different approaches to a pathology.
Yeah, that's so true. I think people sometimes get caught up on the boards as being, can you be a good therapist? And I think everybody coming out of grad school has that capability. I think you just need to be aware that your university wants you to pass as much as you want to pass.
Yeah.
So you're as prepared as you need to be when you graduate. They don't really leave any gaps in your learning. So when you talk about confidence, I think that's very true. Like, be confident. You've covered everything that's going to be on that board. The accrediting body, CAPD, makes sure that the university is teaching what's on the boards. You can't be an accredited university if you're not. So you're going to have all the information somewhere locked in that brain. So just about retaining it, unlocking it, making sure it's something that you attach to and you can gather. So I think that, like I said, I wish there wasn't that anxiety now of, if I don't pass this, I'm probably going to lose a job if I have one set up, because nobody's going to sit around for 4 months while I prepare for my boards. I think that's a lot of undue stress. And I get that it's a byproduct of people putting the answers out there, and they don't want to have 10,000 questions because it's too hard that way, but it just stinks. I think that's tough on them.
See, and I approach it a little different than that. And this is good that we don't agree on everything, because I'm all in favor of make commitments, commit yourself, whether it's a job or just committing to passing the test. But I don't think if you're the type of person who can handle some of that, I think it only makes us stronger. It adds resiliency to people. So I'm all in favor of whatever it takes. Like I was married, and we'd just had our oldest. Connor was just a baby. And I like that added pressure that I've got a family I'm responsible for. Like this is on me to pass this thing now and take care of my family. And I can understand where some people don't, maybe some people crumble under that, but that's a whole nother conversation we could have about maybe, I don't know, is the mental state of the world like the right thing right now, whether it's PT or anything else? Are people just too fragile now? I sat on one thing that spurred this idea on. Remember how I said that I got this idea? Maybe I shared this with you, but in December at our Briarcliff advisory board meeting, they talked about things that would help improve passing rating, because I guess it slipped just a little bit. And some of it just comes to dedication and mental approach to it. I guess it's fairly common. I don't know the numbers, but I guess it's fairly common now, more and more, for people to graduate. Let's say they graduate in May, and then they want to take a little bit of time, right? Take time for themselves. You hear that a lot. I actually do hear that expression a lot. Sure, fine, but prioritize first. Like you can always go on a vacation, whether you want to right now with COVID or whatever, but take your exam first. To your point, you come off hot on, you know, 2 years of didactic for sure. Wherever you're at, use that to your advantage. You know, come in, roll into that exam with a lot of confidence. Take it, whether it's April or July, one of those blocks. Don't push
Mhm.
it to October. You know, don't keep prolonging it, because that has an adverse effect on your mental state and emotions as well. You know, especially when you want pressure. Maybe maybe I'm looking at ass backwards, because maybe that puts more pressure when they see all their colleagues have passed and they're out there working. Um, you know, little pressure there too. But I wouldn't recommend putting it off at all. If you're ready for it, if you're mentally ready for it, you're confident, and you put it in, then just go do it. Go execute.
Yeah, if I'm gonna be honest, I would recommend taking the April one for
Yeah,
most students. You know, if your university allows you to take it early, I would take it in April. Makes the job hunt a million times easier. I've said before, I just don't like hiring people that haven't passed their boards. It's a lot of stress on me. Um,
yeah,
so, and like to your point, you're never going to be more ready probably than mid-April anyways. Most of the universities, you're in your rotation, you got a little bit of time to study because you can put nose to the grindstone, use your weekends to study,
yeah,
just be done with it, versus graduate, take a few weeks off, do the job hunt thing, you know, you just fall out of it. So that would be my
yeah,
recommendation, is if your university allows it and you're ready, take it.
yeah.
Take it.
Definitely under this current system. Like, and I don't know when that changed. I don't recall. Maybe it's 2012 or 2013, but sometime around there is when this thing. I remember hiring therapists, and that's when finding out, like, what, you can't take it till July. What?
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
So
Don't put it off though.
I would agree with that. It's one thing we can agree on.
All right. Love it.
But yeah, we best move on to our top five. Palette cleanse this thing up.
Yeah, time for some fun. We'll go back, shift some. Well, this whole thing's been fun. Who am I kidding? We're gonna stay with the football theme. So our top five, we're going to cinema, back to cinema, tying in football. So our top five are quarterback portrayals in football movies. So our criteria, has to be a quarterback, has to be somebody playing, portraying the quarterback in a film, and there has to be a football scene in the movie. So prior to hitting record, as an example, you can't use Uncle Rico, even if he's got the greatest arm of all time and he can throw a football over the mountains. That guy, he's not going to make the list. He can't. He's disqualified. So,
Oh, okay. My number five may be controversial then.
oh, well, I'm gonna go with I'll kick it off with a quick honorable mention, and then I'll go to my number five. My honorable mention is Dennis Quaid in Any Given Sunday, playing Cap Rooney, the old veteran gunslinger quarterback. Tough as nails, but his back has just fallen apart. Yeah, great, but I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. But there's another quarterback on the horizon that's pushing him out the door. And great movie. I really enjoy that movie. It's not without its faults, but it ages pretty well. The only thing it's missing is obviously is the time Oliver Stone made it. He made it very hard R, and he wasn't going to get NFL official logo. So that's the one thing missing from that movie. But Quaid's portrayal is great. He looks the part. I mean, he looks like an old jock, beat up, and plays it really well. So he's my honorable mention. My number five is James Van Der Beek in Varsity Blues. Very enjoyable movie. Football scenes are filmed very well, which can't be said for every movie that's portrayed football. So I like Jonathan Moxon, backup quarterback. It's thrusted into the limelight when Lance Harvard goes down with a knee injury. So also portrayed by Paul Walker, would have been an honorable mention as well if I could add more. But Van Der Beek shows up, got a great arm, got a great brain. He's going to an Ivy League school, but just stuck in the football town of Texas, where that's all people care about. little Friday night light. So
Can't wait to get to Brown University.
Can't wait to get to Brown. That's my number 5 is James Vanderbeek, Varsity Blues.
Yeah, I struggled with this list. Surprising, not as many quarterbacks, really the focus of football movies coming out. So I was a stretch. That's why my number 5 is a stretch. And I was surprised how many football movies like I didn't really attach to that much. We talk honorable mention. Like wasn't a longest yard guy. I didn't, things like Draft Day, those kind of movies I just never attached to. If you look at like Jerry Maguire, like I just felt like Jerry O'Connell's character wasn't like
he doesn't actually play football in the movie either.
Right. And there's a lot of movies like that. And you can look at, other movies where the quarterback's just a secondary role. It just never attached to me. So my list was actually a pretty short list. It was mostly about finding 5 and then putting them in an order of like, who would I want to be my quarterback? Who did I enjoy watching? So my number 5, very controversial, Jimmy Dix from The Last Boy Scout. I don't know if you're familiar with this movie. Damon Wayans, yep. Now, you might say he doesn't play football in the movie, but I think if you'll remember near the end, he rolls in on a horse because they're the Stallions.
Yep.
Dude gets a football from the sidelines and probably throws that thing about 300 yards into the stands to hit the senator
on the
horse. Face. On the horse, no leg. So I gotta say,
the assassination attempt, though.
Correct.
I mean, he's not just doing it to smoke the senator.
No, I mean he'd like to do that, but I mean if you imagine how a stadium's laid out, that senator was not sitting on the sidelines on the bench. Like this dude rocked the football into the stands. Probably the greatest feat of athletic talent of any quarterback on my list to throw a ball that far, that accurate. Jimmy Dix. His one-liners are probably better than any quarterback on this list. Mm-hmm. He had a little bit of a gambling problem, but who doesn't?
Why he's not in the league.
Yeah, right. Yep. I mean, Michael Jordan's a great basketball player. Gambling problem too. So, greatness, right? So my number 5, Jimmy Dix, questionable, but again, try to throw a ball from a horse. It's not easy.
Yeah. So, okay, I'll let you in on that technicality because he does throw the football.
Yeah. Very well.
Yeah, good movie too. Underrated old gem of like 30 years ago.
Oh man, I can watch that movie time after.
It's gritty R-rated. Bruce Willis at his like he's totally playing John McClane again.
Yeah, and then you put Damon Wayans in there. That was prime Damon Wayans time.
Yeah.
I mean, his comedic timing was pretty solid. That was a good movie.
Yeah, they played off each other really well. My number 4 goes back to Any Given Sunday. It's Jamie Foxx playing Steve and Willie Beeman, the young upstart quarterback. What's so interesting is how ahead of its time this movie kind of was, because he was such a mobile quarterback. And you go back to the late 90s, like this came out in 99. So Michael Vick hadn't even been in the league yet. I mean, he really set that mold. So you're maybe looking at Randall Cunningham as potentially a template, but not many guys could move around like he did. And that's what sets it apart. Jamie's pretty decent athlete, shows it, like that's what I was going by too. Did they look the part in the film? Like, do they really look like they could throw the ball decently? They got fairly okay mechanics. So yeah, and he checks those boxes. Good surrounding cast around him too. So Willie Beeman, he cuts a music video right in the beginning or right in the middle of the movie when he's hitting his stride. Yeah, there we go. That's my number 4.
All right, my number 4. Again, you talk about looking the part. That's maybe where this movie misses the line just a little bit, but it was meant to be a little more of a funny movie. So my number 4, Paul Blake from Necessary Roughness, 1991. This was the Replacements before the Replacements was a thing, right? The reason I picked him as a quarterback I would like to have on my team, like dude was, I think, 35 in the movie, just this older guy comes in, really puts this team on his shoulder, obviously apprehensive like every movie. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I still have it in me. He's throwing the football at the dummy in the field. And
Yeah.
but just that mentorship as a 35-year-old in these college kids, although everybody in the movie was like 40 playing college kids. He believes in old stone hands, throws him the long ball, the fake field goal at the end, rolls out. This guy just doesn't have much left in the tank, but he still makes it happen. So, and Scott Bakula, dude's cool. Just has a
lot of charisma back then.
Yeah, I was a Quantum Leap guy, so
yeah.
My fantasy football team is Bakula's Dracula's. I have a mock-up of him
Ooh.
from that movie as a vampire. So yeah, it's a lot of things in my life attached to that. So that's my number 4. Not the best athlete, but
Necessary Roughness. That's another great classic. Mine goes back a little further now, and I'm going to go with, this is almost like a default, but he has to just go in there. Burt Reynolds in the original Longest Yard. I mean, Burt was, people can forget. I mean, he's before my time, but when you go back and know the history, I mean, he was a legit football player at Florida State. Played running back though. But I mean, that background alone, he roomed with Lee Corso. I think that's kind of cool in its own right. And Burt just had swagger. I mean, he was like the dude in the late 70s. And everything about him was just like, you could see that playing out. And I don't know, I liked it. I was always a Burt Reynolds guy. Like I was chasing around, going to every new movie opening he had or anything. But I always, when you look back, there's certain guys that portray like the archetype of a man, like what a dude should be, and Burt's definitely up there for me. So, the original Longest Yard, Burt Reynolds.
Yeah, Burt didn't make my list. Just like I said, kind of before my time. I never really got into it. Watched it a few times. But I will say this, I preferred his portrayal to Adam Sandler's portrayal.
Yeah.
I felt like like you said, the charisma Burt brought to that role was just phenomenal. And he looked the part, but the movie just didn't, I don't know, didn't sit with me. Kind of a weird movie, but.
It is. It's a weird, I mean, it's a weird concept for a film. I wish they could have had a different backdrop for it to showcase it, but it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, and being an older movie, the plot was a little rushed, which is some good, some bad, right? The Adam Sandler movie probably went the opposite way, where it was like, oh, this is kind of boring. So I guess
the biggest weakness with the Sandler ones that it's like so many of his. It's almost like self-gratifying. Like, yeah, this is true, and then he goes out. To his credit, though, he goes out and brings in 20 different guys from all different walks of sports life, wrestling, and she just plugs them into the movie to make it fun. So I definitely say that the remake's more fun.
I would agree.
That's what you're going for, but you're right. I mean, Adam Sandler is, I don't know. I don't need to go on about that.
Yeah.
What's your number 3?
My number 3. I go at number 3 with Willie Beeman as well. Echo your 4, right? Yeah, he looked the part, looked very athletic. Like you said, that was not as much template of that running quarterback with a giant arm. Like I said, Mike Vick comes in later, kind of fills that real life role. His maturity, it's funny to see him grow, become a jerk, fall back down to earth. Interesting part, as the end of the movie, he's already starting to have arm problems. He's falling apart. I think that was always the narrative at that time, was you can't play football like that. You can't throw huge like that. You can't run like that. You're just going to wear your body out. The West Coast offense was the way, that was the future. That's how you should play ball. So it was interesting to take that. I mean, there's a little bit of race in that movie, that there's a little bit of undertone of that. I don't think anybody would deny that. But then it also in a way goes after the race and going, see, you can't do it. It's just not going to work. So it was interesting. It was a good movie just to show that growth and change. Sometimes it was overdone, right? Oliver Stone, I think, went to make this
Yeah,
beautifully like
totally
choreographed movie.
sensationalized. Yeah,
Yeah. But when he drops back, like I felt like it created a cool sense of like motion in the game, and how for a quarterback, like if you're totally out of your league, it's just there's no time back there. It's the I'm seeing ghosts out there, right?
yeah, yeah,
But then it was weird because he interspersed like clips of the past and like Martin Luther King and all this other stuff. Like
yeah,
I don't think that's going through your mind when you're dropping
yeah.
back. Um,
The history of the game. Yeah,
yeah, right. People leaping
I'm
over
still
piles
gonna.
and stuff. So
As far as football films go, I got that. It's one of my. Well, there's not that many. I mean, it's you'd think there would be tons of films about football, many quarterbacks, but there's just not
mhm.
when you really research it down. But I got Any Given Sunday is definitely a top 3 football film, pure football film for me. I think Al Pacino it's like one of his last great roles, in my opinion, where
Mhm.
he's just nailing it on every cylinder. That final speech he gives the team too,
Oh, Game of
just
Inches,
still gives,
man.
yeah, it gives me goosebumps. But you're right. I remember watching, I went to that in the movie theater. I was so excited to see it come out. And a big foot, at the time I was, like 18. So, prime of my football playing life. But yeah, there's a lot of, the drama's ratcheted up, but the cast is amazing. The cast is really, really phenomenal. All these different, especially you go back and watch it again, like
Mhm.
people who went on to do other things and contributed. And that relationship too between that friction that he has with LL Cool J too.
Yeah.
I mean, playing the star running back who's kind of pushed aside too. I mean, there's a lot of that little drama that's being played out in that film. He
Yeah.
shoehorns about everything he possibly can into that team, and every piece of adversity they could try to overcome. And there's even you talk about sensational, but isn't there a scene that the dude's eyeball gets ripped out in the
Yeah,
game?
right. They put it
And
in a Ziploc bag. You get that
I
on
don't think
ice.
that's ever actually happened, but
Yeah. Yeah, I
this is
think
the
he
guy who
stopped
made
the game at
Platoon
that
though.
point. But
Yeah,
all right, what do you got at
yeah.
number 2?
Number 2, Keanu Reeves playing Shane Falco in The Replacements. He moved up quite a bit. We dusted off The Replacements last night. I know I didn't mention this earlier, but my family and I, kind of coming out of a little COVID quarantine. So last night we did a little family movie and watched The Replacements. I wanted to brush up on this, and I moved him from about number 5 to number 2. Good leadership skills. Keanu, just like he's yeah. What more can you say about him? I mean, he's had this career resurgence now for like the 5th time. When he played, it's perfect for him because he's like playing a washed-up quarterback at the time, and he's really not. It's like the most non-conventional role for him, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, even where he's not just flat affect most of it or reacting to stuff, but he's actually like contributing and moving the dialogue forward and stuff. And he's a lefty. I noticed that last night. He's slinging that with some heat. And it's just always a tough way to game plan for. So Keanu Reeves is Shane Falco in The Replacements number 2.
Yeah, just a charismatic guy for sure. My number 2, Joe Kane, 1993, The Program. Man, that movie, we watched that movie like every Thursday night before a football game. I don't know. It was just the coolest movie. It was R-rated at the time. These guys were just over the top college players, but they actually used real college teams. So that was kind of cool, playing
except for
Michigan.
except for ESU.
Yes.
Which
I
is
can't
famously
imagine
FSU.
any college would have allowed them to use their name. But yeah, I mean, just dude was a leader. His team looked up to him. He had his problems, which I think makes him more relatable. It was like, it wasn't the classic, I'm overcoming some sort of adversity. Like he created his own adversity, self-sabotaging behavior, which was kind of interesting, to see somebody given everything, coming from nothing to have everything and to throw it away to be nothing again, potentially. He was going down the path of being his dad pretty quick. and that's a story you hear a ton. So it was just a cool movie. I mean, put the women and children to bed, go looking for dinner. Again, they did the first person cam when, him and Darnell would have the ball.
Yeah.
That was cool. Like, the pointing, get that guy, we'd always simulate that in football practice. We thought that was so cool. The last play of the game in that movie, just sweet, Georgia Tech forced out of the pocket. 3 or 4 guys try to tackle him. He pulls the ball down, it fumbles, he runs after it, picks it up. Jefferson does a sweet spin move, nails it in the end zone. Kane is able, man, at number 2.
Kane is able. That's my number 1, bro.
Oh, okay.
Craig Sheffer playing Tim Kane in the program. You're right. And they really captured, especially at the time, I mean, it's kind of dated. It's probably, 93?
93.
But they captured like that, the game day environment that ESPN, they actually got ESPN to, join or be part of the movie, I guess. Chris Berman, when he's talking about his adversary, Tim Wayman.
Yeah.
He could go all the Wayman. Yeah. It's like you could see Berman actually doing that. It's very realistic in a lot of ways. I could go on about that movie and all the other characters,
Oh, yeah.
Alvin
Great
Mack.
cast.
I mean, we used to quote Alvin Mack when we played defense all the time. And can't do that around my kids.
No, that's not one you're gonna watch on family movie night for a while.
Yeah, Joe Kane though. I mean, it's just that's what I think when I was growing up, that came out. As I'm getting into high school, and you're thinking like, this is what a quarterback should look like and act like and be like, and he played the part like super well. But you're right, he had a little nice. You got to overcome something. Like it's just boring to watch it. You never want to watch a movie about a person who's just had every gift handed to them and every ability in the world. Nothing's hard for them. So the alcoholism background, I like that. I felt it was a good. It sensationalizes it a little bit. They cram in a lot of stuff. Like you wonder now, like would he really go to treatment and then come back in the same season? There's obviously that's pretty rushed, but they're doing what they can. They fit it in. You're right. He leads the team. Everybody looks up to him. The coach respects him. Jamie Kahn is playing the coach, and as I touched on, you're right. They got like the Wolverines, like Michigan's in there, Georgia Tech, I think Boston College, Iowa. Iowa's where Alvin Mack gets injured, but famously, the whole thing is like a portrayal of like Florida State. That's the program they're trying to portray, and even the uniforms look it.
Yeah.
But Florida State was obviously not going to sign off on any of this stuff, so there's just ESU there. Yes, Eastern State University.
Yeah, I'm sure Florida State didn't like that. Yeah, you don't get 80,000 people to watch a chess match. Really care about athletics at all.
My only frustration is like, what happened to Craig Sheffer after that? I mean, the dude what a platform. He should have went on to do great things.
Yeah.
That's my number 1 program.
All right. My number 1, I believe was your number 5, Jonathan Moxon, 99, Varsity Blues.
Okay.
Just hit me at the right time. I'm playing high school football. These kids are playing high school football. No quarterback ever just, and it was that we had been watching the program for years, even though it was R-rated and we were like 14.
Yeah.
We could rent it from the video store, so they'd rent it to us. This was the next movie that like just hit that chord of, man, it got you pumped up. The practice scenes early on, the first game, I think it's AC/DC they're playing when they're just all fired up, flying around the football. Again, he was a smart kid. He came in, good arm, but again, intangibles. I mean, he put his team first, right? Like we got to get the running back in the end zone. He's been running down the field the whole time. Coach doesn't give him the ball. Let's change the play on the field. I mean, Bud Kilmer was super intimidating. I get intimidated watching that movie.
Yeah.
And he stands up to him. Like, I still get chills when I see like him yelling at him. I'm like, oh man, that's intense. Like, but that's how high school coaches were sometimes. Do what I tell you.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, God, what's his name? Why John Voight playing the Coach Kilmer, and
Yeah, he's
well,
probably the most intimidating head coach in a football movie. I mean,
maybe, yeah, he really runs some guys through in that one.
you know, and they're practicing and he grabs them by the face mask and pulls them around. I mean, I remember our coach kind of doing that stuff, you know, just to get your attention. Right. And nowadays you can't even slap a player on the helmet. You know, Bruce Arians gets yelled at for hitting an NFL player on the helmet, you know.
Yeah. Like, it's a different world right now. Billy Bob cry, baby.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. That whole
Billy Bob's dying on the bench. Get back in there for one play, you know.
Yeah.
Blames him for the quarterback going down. I mean,
yeah, it's one of my star quarterbacks dragging his leg.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tough, man. I was more of a Lance Harbor guy. I think he had more skill. I was heartbroken when he goes down.
Yeah. Oh, the movie just started out terrible from you from the beginning. Huh?
Oh, yeah. I walked out halfway through. I don't even know how it ended.
Oh, you should watch it again. Oh, it's yeah. Oh, that's my number one.
Oh, I love that. I really enjoyed it. I remember going off to college, and I mean, it's a movie. You're right. It's aimed for teenagers, and soundtrack was great. Anytime they can license all that, you know, that music. I think the final game plays "My Hero" by Foo Fighters, and it's just rocking. And he had, you know, it's a good fun. It's just a fun movie. I mean, there's some themes in there that are a little deeper, and they, you know, they touch on, just like so many of these other things we talked about. You know, Sunday try to shoehorn a lot of ideas into a football film, but you know, they tackle like culture, race, you know, socioeconomics, the way that sports can lift people up. You know, I think that can be forgotten about. And that should be true. I mean, the leadership skills it instills in people, like is inherently good at its core. Obviously, it can be bastardized, but sports are inherently
great power comes great responsibility in small town football.
So true. And you know, they say like wasn't that I want to say a little history on that. I think they were trying to portray kind of Friday Night Lights before Friday Night Light. Like the book had already been out for a long time. And I think there might have been even maybe some type of copyright type of, you know, talk going on there, whether there's a lawsuit or not, but before the actual film, and then later on the TV show came out. So trying to just portray Texas high school football, you know, which to the rest of all of us, you know, outside of there, it was maybe the first look at it, how serious people took it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a lot different than Maddock high school football.
Yeah, definitely. Even, you know, but even in Carrington, I mean, on a Friday night in the fall, football's was pretty popular. You know, it's a small town and not much else to do. Then go and see how the team's doing.
Oh yeah, I remember in the playoffs, headed up to AMO. You know, it's about an hour and a half away. I mean, every business in Maddock shut down. 2:00. You know, grocery stores, post office, bars. I mean, they closed up the doors because everybody went to the game. So there's some truth to that. And I would say probably the football players got preferential treatment during football season. I mean, so there's some truth to that. But
yeah, you didn't have a teacher that was stripping on the side though?
No. We had some questionable teachers. That's probably stories for the after hour podcast.
Yeah. Tweeter. What a role by Scott Conn too. We referenced Jimmy Conn earlier, but Scott Conn coming into his own. I mean, that was the role that was kind of fun. I mean, when me and my buddy, he was the guy you were quoting when the movie was done, and the guy who's, you know, hooking up with the chicks and driving off, just partying the whole time, not taking it serious. There's a lot to like about that character too.
Oh yeah, I mean, the movie just starts out good mooning, boys, right? Like you knew you were in for you knew you were in for a fun movie, start to finish.
Yeah. So, well, good, man. Any closing remarks on this episode?
Nope. I think it was good conversation. I like the list. Not as much overlap as I thought. I thought it would just be the same 5 quarterbacks. So that's good.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, Casey, until we meet again, I'll let you sign us off, my man.
Yep. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time. Get a little better every day, folks.
Take care. Peace.